It's just our little secret, Maya. Your father works so hard, and we don't want to worry him." Aunt Claire's words hung in the air between us as she placed the empty medication bottle back in the cabinet. My fingers trembled as I nodded, the room spinning slightly from whatever she had given me. "You're such a good girl," she whispered, stroking my hair. "So special. At 32, I can look back and name what was happening. But at 12, I only knew something felt wrong. I was 12 years old when my mother died of cancer. The world as I knew it collapsed, leaving Dad and me fumbling through grief in our suddenly empty house. Dad tried his best, but he was drowning in his own pain and the demands of running his business alone. When his sister Claire offered to move in temporarily to help, it seemed like the answer to our prayers. Aunt Claire had always been the fun relative, the one who brought the best birthday gifts and told stories that made Mom roll her eyes. She arrived with colorful scarves draped around her neck and promises that everything would be okay. Dad's shoulders relaxed visibly the day she moved in, and I felt hopeful for the first time in months. The first few weeks were wonderful. Aunt Claire cooked Mom's recipes, helped me with homework, and made sure I got to soccer practice on time. She listened when Dad needed to talk and gave him space when he needed silence. I thought we were healing. But looking back, I can see how carefully she established herself as essential, how methodically she created the foundation for what would come later. It started small. "You look pale, Maya," she said one morning before school. "Let me check your temperature." Her hand lingered on my forehead, then traced down my cheek to my neck. Something about the touch made me step back. She frowned. "You might be coming down with something. I have some herbal supplements that will help." The first time she gave me the special tea, I felt dizzy afterward and slept for 14 hours. When I woke, she was sitting beside my bed, watching me. "You were having such awful nightmares," she explained, though I couldn't remember dreaming at all. "You poor thing, grief does terrible things to the mind." Dad was concerned when he came home and found me still in bed. "Maybe we should see a doctor," he suggested. "I've already called," Aunt Claire said smoothly. "They think it's just stress and exhaustion. She needs rest and proper care." She placed her hand on Dad's arm. "I'll take care of everything." After that, the special tea became a weekly occurrence. "It's just vitamins and herbs," Aunt Claire assured me, "to help build your immune system after all you've been through." But each time I drank it, I lost hours, sometimes waking with odd bruises I couldn't explain or finding my pajamas had been changed. When I tried to refuse the tea, Aunt Claire's face would darken. "After all I've done for you and your father, this is how you thank me? By not trusting me?" The guilt would wash over me, and I'd drink what she offered. Dad was working longer hours, partly to keep the business afloat and partly, I think, to avoid the empty space where Mom should have been. When he was home, Aunt Claire portrayed me as delicate and unstable. "Maya had another episode today," she would tell him, though I couldn't remember anything happening. "The grief counselor says this is normal, but we need to keep a close eye on her." Gradually, my world narrowed. Aunt Claire suggested homeschooling until things stabilize. My friends stopped calling after Aunt Claire repeatedly told them I was too sick for visitors. She became the gatekeeper between me and the outside world, between me and my father. I was becoming a ghost in my own life. One afternoon, when Aunt Claire thought I was napping, I overheard her on the phone. "The insurance money is all in Mark's name," she was saying. "But I'm working on it. The girl is the key. If I can establish that she's unstable, potentially a danger to herself, I could become her legal guardian. Mark is too overwhelmed to fight it." My blood went cold. In that moment, the fog I'd been living in started to clear. This wasn't about helping us. This was about my mother's life insurance policy and our home. That night, I pretended to drink the tea but secretly poured it into a potted plant when Aunt Claire turned away. Without the sedation, I stayed awake and alert. Around midnight, I heard my bedroom door open. Through barely opened eyes, I watched Aunt Claire approach my bed with a small bottle and syringe. Fear froze me in place as the pieces clicked together. The unexplained bruises. The lost time. The increasing symptoms that only Aunt Claire witnessed. She was drugging me and creating evidence of instability. I must have moved or made a sound because she suddenly stopped. "Maya, Are you awake, sweetheart? I forced my breathing to remain deep and even. After what felt like hours, she sighed and left the room. Once the door closed, I quietly slipped out of bed and locked it for the first time. The next morning, Aunt Claire was all concern. You locked your door last night, she said, her voice gentle but her eyes sharp. Were you having anxiety again? You know you can always come to me. I must have done it in my sleep, I lied. I didn't sleep well. Then you definitely need your tea today, she replied, already moving to the kitchen. I needed help, but who would believe me? Dad saw Aunt Claire as our savior. My friends had been systematically removed from my life. I had no access to a phone without Aunt Claire's knowledge. But then I remembered Mr. Peterson, our elderly neighbor who had been Mom's friend. He still waved to me whenever he saw me in the yard, despite Aunt Claire's attempts to limit even these interactions. If I could reach him, maybe he could help. That night, I again pretended to drink the tea. As soon as Aunt Claire checked on me and went to her own room, I quietly opened my window. The drop to the ground was substantial, but there was a trellis that might support my weight. With shaking hands, I began to climb down. Halfway down, my foot slipped. I clung to the trellis, heart pounding, as a piece of wood cracked loudly in the quiet night. I froze, waiting for lights to come on, for Aunt Claire to discover me. But the house remained dark. Mr. Peterson's lights were on, a warm glow in the darkness. I crept across our yard and knocked softly on his back door. After a moment, he appeared, surprise evident on his kind face. Maya, what are you doing out at this hour? Words tumbled out in a confused rush, the tea, the missing time, the overheard phone call. To his credit, Mr. Peterson listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Let me get this straight, he said when I finally ran out of breath. You believe your aunt is drugging you and trying to make you appear mentally unstable to gain control of your father's finances? Put so plainly, it sounded paranoid even to my ears. But I nodded firmly. I know how it sounds, but it's true. Please, can you help me call Dad? Or the police? Mr. Peterson studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you, Maya. Your mother always said you were perceptive beyond your years. Let's call your father first. Dad arrived 30 minutes later, his face tight with worry. Mr. Peterson had suggested not confronting Aunt Claire directly until they had more information, so she didn't know I was missing from my room. In Mr. Peterson's living room, I again explained everything. Dad's face went from confused to horrified to angry. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked. She told me not to worry you, I whispered. And then, I was scared you wouldn't believe me. She kept telling you I was unstable. Dad pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm so sorry, Maya. I should have seen what was happening. The next step happened quickly. Dad called a friend who was a police officer, who arranged for a drug test. The results confirmed the presence of sedatives in my system, medications not prescribed to me and dangerous for a child my age. Armed with this evidence, Dad, his police officer friend, and I returned home early the next morning. Aunt Claire was in the kitchen, preparing my morning tea. The look on her face when she saw me clear-eyed beside my father, is something I'll never forget. Shock, quickly masked by concern. Mark, what's happening? Is Maya okay? She should be resting. I think you know exactly what's happening, Claire, Dad said, his voice steadier than I'd heard it in months. We know about the tea. About the drugs. All of it. What followed was ugly. Aunt Claire's denials. Her attempts to paint me as troubled, delusional. Then, when faced with the drug test results, her justifications, she was only trying to help me rest, to ease my anxiety. She had my best interests at heart. The police officer arrested Aunt Claire for child endangerment and administering controlled substances to a minor. As they led her away, she looked at me with such hatred that I shrank back against my father. I was helping you, she shouted. You ungrateful child. Mark, she needs me. The door closed behind them, and suddenly the house was quiet again. Dad sank into a chair, his face in his hands. I failed you, he said. I was so lost in my own grief that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. I sat beside him, leaning against his shoulder the way I used to before Mom got sick. "We both missed it," I said. She fooled both of us. The aftermath wasn't easy. There were police interviews and court appearances. Aunt Claire eventually pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a shorter sentence. We learned she had a history of financial fraud that Mom had known about but kept from us to keep peace in the family. Dad and I attended grief counseling, real counseling, not the fictional sessions Aunt Claire had claimed to arrange. Slowly, we learned how to talk to each other again, how to be a family of two. There were nightmares, of course. Times when I wouldn't take even aspirin because the fear of being drugged again was too strong. Dad installed new locks on all our doors and gave me control over who could enter my room and when. The hardest part was learning to trust again. 4 years afterward, I questioned people's motives, analyzed their words for double meanings, watched for inconsistencies in their behavior. But there was healing too. Dad cut back his work hours to be home more. He learned to cook, badly at first and then with increasing skill. We established Friday night movie marathons and Sunday hikes, new traditions for our new reality. Mr. Peterson became a regular visitor, filling some of the grandparent-shaped hole in my life. He taught me to play chess and listened to my fears without judgment. By the time I started high school, the acute pain had dulled to a manageable ache. Mom was still gone, but her absence no longer defined us. And Aunt Claire? She became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how vulnerability can be exploited, but also of our capacity to recover. Now, at 32, I'm a child psychologist specializing in trauma and family dynamics. My experiences with Aunt Claire shaped my career path, giving me insight into how manipulation and abuse can hide behind a facade of care and concern. I'm married to a kind, transparent man who understands why I sometimes need reassurance about medications, why I keep my independence fiercely, why trust isn't something I give easily. Dad is doing well, remarried to a wonderful woman who never tries to replace Mom but has created her own place in our family. The lessons I learned from those dark months with Aunt Claire have stayed with me. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, even if you can't articulate why, pay attention to that feeling. Isolation is a warning sign. When someone tries to separate you from friends, family, or support systems, question their motives. Help can come from unexpected places. Mr. Peterson wasn't an authority figure or even someone I knew well, but he was willing to listen and take action. Most importantly, speaking up is brave and necessary. No matter how frightening the consequences might seem, staying silent only protects those who are causing harm. If my story resonates with you, if you recognize patterns from your own life or someone you know, please reach out for help. There are people who will believe you, who will stand beside you as you reclaim your narrative. The path to healing isn't straightforward, and it isn't quick. But it is possible. Trust me on this, I've walked it myself, one step at a time.